is an interesting one in the Idaho Statesman. Eagle, real estate agent, offers free listings to liberals leaving Idaho. Is that allowed? And also, he was going to give an AR-15 to any conservative that used him coming into Idaho. Now that's some marketing. Let's get into it. Here we go. So I first saw this article in the Seattle Times. They basically just cut down the title and ran the thing. Seattle Times is a wildly, wildly liberal newspaper. I don't care what you say. Their slant is always, got to protect Seattle. Seattle's the greatest thing ever. Well, Seattle's got some issues. And one of the major things is people are moving out of Seattle. They're going to Idaho. I had a very good friend from high school, middle school, moved there because he felt that the school system here in Issaquah was not something that he wanted to deal with long term. And state of Washington does not align with a lot of our morals. And it's morals. It is a moral issue of right from wrong. It's not politics. Let's read the article. But first, we're gonna watch a little video from the guy doing this, real estate agent. And hats off to him for doing this. Here we go.
Looking on X.com, which is where I spend most of my social media time now, and I saw one celebrity was saying if Trump wins the election, they're going to move out of the country to Canada or wherever. Good. And it's kind of laughable. We've heard that before. And I always think to myself, you promise? So for me, a liberal threatening to move, a celebrity liberal threatening to move out of the country if Trump is elected is go ahead, go for it. So it got me thinking, in my unusual ways. And I thought, hey, what does that look like for us locally? If a liberal threatened to move out of Idaho or something, I said, hey, maybe I'll help encourage that actually. And so I thought, what if I did an ad where I said I would do a free listing for any liberal that's looking to move out of Idaho into another state? Because I think a lot of that's going to be coming where people are moving to different locations based off of their belief systems. So far, no interest in the ad. However, it's not usually a lot of people that are ready to do anything.
And I think this is great publicity for this real estate broker within the conservative community, but those in the liberal community are not going to be willing to work with a conservative. You just don't have that crossover. It just doesn't work. Conservatives will oftentimes begrudgingly work with a liberal, but liberals are hard no-go. Somebody mentions the word Trump and they're like, boop, I'm out. You know what I mean? So it doesn't cut both ways. So I don't think this marketing will work, but I'm talking about it here on News for Reasonable People. So it is working
right away. So maybe after some time, we'll have some interest. And I think a lot of people right now are kind of like holding their breath and waiting to see what happens after that election. So maybe right after the election. So there's definitely a lot more talk about people moving to be around people that have similar beliefs to them. In fact, I had a crew come out from Paris, France 2 weeks ago and followed me around for a day to talk about people who moved out of blue cities in Oregon into Idaho because they were escaping politics. And some people that I helped on numerous occasions in the last 4 years do that. Are we seeing more of that? Heck yeah. And they're obviously noticing that from across the world. As far as my ad, does it contribute to that? Well, I don't know. I hope so. That ad came from a comment on Facebook, and it was for any conservatives moving into the area. As a reply to somebody who said, what will you do for conservatives moving in? I said, I'll get them an AR-15, which was almost immediately taken down by Facebook. And I got my hand slapped. So I can't do any further comments or whatever about that. But yes, I did offer that. And because of the way I stand publicly, because of my public explanation of my beliefs and who I like to work with and who I would love to be living around, I have people who are conservative that go out of their way to reach out to me to help them relocate from other states, from, escaping blue cities, the refugees, if you will, the political refugees of the world who are reaching out to me to help them move here. And that's probably been like 95% of my business has been conservatives that have been moving from other states into Idaho. So yeah, I do get a lot of questions from them.
It's a good piece. And, I I'm a conservative podcaster, and I live here in Bellevue, Washington. I grew up in Bellevue, Washington, and this is not a state that I will be able to retire in. Seattle is not a city I'll be able to retire in. We've got the whole tax and spend deal going on. We've got all kinds of social programs that all needs money. And at some point in time, that money is going to come from a state income tax. And I don't want my hard-earned tax dollars going towards some of the ridiculousness that our state supports. Just absolute harebrained. What were you thinking? What kind of drugs were you on when you came up with that policy? I don't want to be involved in that down the road. In the meantime, I grew up here. It didn't always used to be this way. We've got the influence from California. We've had that for years. It's been coming in hard since the 80s. And Seattle is not the city it used to be. And clearly, you drive on the freeway system, and you're like, good Lord, are we in LA? Are we in South Central LA? Because the amount of graffiti you've got is just hideous. Number of cars being stolen, number of murders taking place, crime. I mean, lack of police officers. The list just goes on and on, right? Let's read the article. Posts on Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter, made a splash. Real estate firm in Eagle was offering free real estate listings to liberals leaving Idaho. Hey, you guys, scooch. Are there any liberals in Idaho? Are there? Maybe some ones that have moved there, because I remember podcasting about the folks from Portland. They're just like, we got to get the heck out of Dodge, and we want to go to Idaho to raise our kids. We're still going to take our liberal values with us, but we're just going to be real quiet. And you're like, okay, that's probably not going to work all that well. We are here to help you return to your safe spaces, said its post, which included a picture of a couple wearing disposable face masks. Isn't it so true? Those who wear face masks give away their political affiliation when they're not required. And those of us who fly flags, American flags that say we love America, that gives away your political affiliation. I mean, it's wildly obvious where I live in Bellevue, right? I mean, it's Republican, Democrat. And you know how you can tell a Democrat in Bellevue? They have signs, political signs out in their yard. You put a sign up for Trump, which I've never put a sign up for anybody. But if you put a sign up for Trump, it would not end up well. Yeah, it would be not good, because, the left is tolerant when it's in, agreement with your value system. But if your value systems goes anywhere, right of center, then, no, we don't agree. The firm Idaho Wild got a range of responses, everything from people in full support and throwing in additional offers, all the way to people lecturing me about being whatever, hateful and unchristian. How is that unchristian? Helping somebody get to a place where they want to be, their safe zone. Mark Fitzpatrick, the company's owner, told the Idaho Statesman by phone. Fitzpatrick, a retired police officer from California, also owns the Old State Saloon, an Eagle bar that has drawn attention for its politics. We're going to read about that in a little bit. Actually, Old State, Eagle bar. Yeah, here we go. Eagle Hetero Awesome Fest. How about the event lineup on Friday, September the 13th? Straight Female Friday. Heterosexual women with XX chromosomes enjoy 50% off any drink. How about Saturday Straight Stud Club? Heterosexual men with XY chromosomes get 50% off any one drink in the house. It's your day, gentlemen. How about on September the 15th? Beers for breeders. To cap off the weekend, anyone who identifies as a super straight gets a free pint on the house. Let's raise a glass to keeping it real and celebrating the natural order. That has got to be triggering to some, right? I mean, that's got to just, head spin off. So funny. So let's get into it. Firm's ad violates no laws. Federal Housing Act prohibits discrimination because of national origin, religion, or sex, and a bunch of other just ridiculousness, among other protected classes. But political affiliation doesn't count as a protected group under that law. I was trying to work through, if you gave out an AR-15, does that violate anything? And I don't think it does. Not sure. You can't just give away a firearm, though, can you? It's got to be registered and that whole thing. I'm not sure. My knowledge of handing out free firearms for a real estate transaction is limited to this podcast. The Post doesn't violate any Idaho real estate laws either, said Bob McLaughlin, a spokesman for the Division of Occupational and Professional Licenses, which serves Idaho's Real Estate Commission. I bet it does in Washington. Bet it does in Washington. Bet it does in Oregon. Bet it does in California. Promotions like Fitzpatrick's, though, can present a slippery slope towards violations of federal law. So the language and graphics used can appear as proxies for discrimination against protected groups. Well, liberals aren't protected, though, right? Neither are conservatives. Clearly, right? This can play out in subsequent interactions between a real estate agent and a prospective buyer or seller. At Summit Properties Northwest, which I own, we've got, 90, 100 brokers, something like that. I don't ever really talk about my political affiliation because it's not really part of the equation. If you want to follow me here on the podcast, you can all day long. But when I'm talking real estate stuff, we serve both conservatives and liberals. That's just how it goes. And you got to work with a whole bunch of different people. So you don't go around flying your flag, all day long in that realm. But what you want to do on your own personal time and what you want to podcast about, even if you're conservative in Seattle, I think it's fair game. It is. Whenever people whatever term that people have a stigma around or have bias towards with further action and sometimes further statements, you know exactly what they mean. It's true. Fitzpatrick said So Fitzpatrick says that he wants to live by people who have biblical morals and ethics, but that those people can be made up of all races and religions and sexes and genders. His posts were intended to be lighthearted, he said, but they stem from his concern about liberal politics. And it's the liberal politics that have brought down Seattle, that have brought down Portland, that have brought down LA, that have brought down Chicago. Do I need to keep on going? No, I don't. But it's so true. It's so true. Does the right, do they over-exaggerate how bad things are? Sometimes not. When you have a deal like CHOP, where an entire area of Seattle is taken over by a bunch of far-left nut jobs, you know what I mean? How far out of reality are we? It's just some very, exuberant Black Lives Matter defenders of their faith. All right, but then they murder 2 black kids, and you're left with, that didn't really work out the way that they intended it, did it? And, if you have to have a conversation with one of those kids' mothers, which I have had online, what do you say? Somebody's kid is dead because of poor decisions made by governmental officials trying to rah that whole Black Lives Matter deal, and it went sideways on them. Horrible, right? Horrible. Somebody's kid is dead. 2 of their kids are dead. There's no discrimination here. This is about people who have just gone to the extreme as far as their beliefs, and they've just become wicked, he said. Liberalism of today is not the liberalism of decades past. I've gotten to the point where I don't want that around. I don't want liberalism around my family. I don't want it around my community. A lot of people feel strongly about that. Because the minute you go down that road, you've got the far left on your, not that far off, and you're left with, that is a slippery slope. I don't feel that way goes the other way on the right. I don't feel that if you're conservative, all of a sudden you're going to be driving a jacked up truck, flying 2 Trump flags with a machine gun in the back. You know what I mean? That just doesn't, that's not a reality. We're not all running to January 6th, public buildings. Fitzpatrick estimates that over 90% of his clients in recent years have been conservatives moving from California to Idaho, to the point where on this podcast, I will get messages saying all the time, when I run this one, I will have messages from you saying, hey, don't talk about Idaho anymore. We got too many people here already. The word's out. People know it's a great place to come. Don't talk about it anymore. Please, for the love of God, don't talk about Idaho anymore. But it's a storyline because this is one of those states where people are going. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, got a handful of others. Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a great one for people from the Pacific Northwest that are looking for affordability. People from Oklahoma don't want me to talk about it. They're like, yeah, we're all full. No more. Send them somewhere else. Send them to Idaho. And Idaho's like, go to Texas. Because you've only got so much geographic space. And you notice people aren't moving to the big liberal cities, except for employment, like Seattle's got going on. They're oftentimes moving away because they don't want to deal with all the ridiculousness. And plenty of people have moved away from Seattle too. So he often posts videos on social media of himself going shooting with his family. As you do. His old state saloon hosted a hetero awesome fest, we just talked about that, as a foil to Boise Pride Festival. The saloon posted an X offering to adopt the babies of any readers considering an abortion and advertised a singles night only for Trump voters. It has cross-posted Idaho Wild's ad on X offering to throw in an additional $1,000 cash and a case of masks if it's a family from Eagle specifically. And a case of masks. There you go. Wear those. Wear those to your heart's content. People would go to my website and they would see literally we explain our beliefs on there. We're constitutional conservatives. We believe in God, the creator, and the wonderful things that are in Idaho that God provided for us, he said. That is one of the things that I think people can't disagree with. Seattle is one of the most godless cities probably in the world. We're just straight up atheist oriented or just godless in general. And it's reflected within our city, lack of churches. People don't go to church. People have no respect for church. People have no respect for religion in general. They just don't care because they've gone down that far left deal and they've got no moral basis. There's none. And people don't want to raise their children around that is bottom line. You know what I mean? So they end up living in these high rises in downtown Seattle and just kind of ignoring what's going on. Why are there two men outside fighting with swords? I don't get it. Just the absolute nuttiness that has become Seattle. So some agents use patriots and freedom in marketing. Pretty easy to figure that out, right? I mean, we're not stupid individuals. You got freedom, you got a flag, you got patriot. If you love America, you're on the right. If you don't, any of those things, you're on the left because you're like, oh, yeah, I can't be affiliated with that. That's a hard no-go. I think there's a lot of people in Seattle that are conservative, but you are not able to voice your opinion for fear of retribution, for fear of being attacked. Because that's a very real thing. It just is. So you can't, I do this podcast and I kind of stay in my lane and the folks from Seattle, they kind of stay in their lane. And, it is what it is, but I'm not going to be here forever. It just won't. This is not a place where you want to retire, not only financially, but because, there's a belief system here that doesn't match my beliefs, period. I'm not a big Bible banger either, but this utter godlessness and belief that hand out drugs to everybody, it's going to be great. And all of that stuff. No, that's not compassion. That's just misguided ideology. It's a broken system. It's a broken thought system. And I don't really want to be around that forever. In the meantime, I got podcasts for years. Right? Just be here and you can talk about stuff going on. And he goes on to say, in real estate, you often work with people you know, like, and trust. She told the Statesman, I would surmise that many people know their agent, how their agent votes, but they may already know that information without the agent having to advertise. 100% true. You go to people that you typically affiliate with, or they're just so good that you're going to go with them either way. That can happen. Seen that happen all day long. You don't necessarily know somebody's political affiliation. They're a professional. They get the job done. And you're like, yeah, maybe they vote. Maybe they're going to vote for Kamala. All right. I wouldn't run out of my way to go voting opposite of my political beliefs, but they're just so damn good that you're like, yeah, sell my house. Some people, that's how they'd roll. And that's their call. Not everybody's, let's vote all the way down the red line. Fitzpatrick's post is not an outlier in Idaho. Olson said her organization has received a heads up in several cases where one real estate agent flagged another's post to the Intermountain Fair Housing Council. She said she was concerned by any case in which agents were facilitating a particular bias. Yeah, that's a slippery slope. I think you take your political bias out of it. I think you just do. And people know where you stand, right? They know where you stand. If you're wildly overweight and you got blue hair, you're probably not going to be, an oath keeper. I'm just saying, right? I mean, that's how it is here in Seattle. I'm not sure how it is in Idaho, but I'm guessing it's the same. It's like we're resegregating ourselves, and that's what concerns me. Well, we are, and it's based a lot on, political belief and moral and spiritual belief. There's no other way to say it. And then you've also got, here in Seattle, you've got people from a lot of different communities around the world, and they are neither Republican nor liberal. But they do believe in family, and they believe in law and order. So from that standpoint, it's really interesting to see how different people react. They're not drawn to one or the other, but they're more likely to go in a direction based on, maybe the belief system they brought from whatever, country of origin that their family is originally from. So, because you don't see, it's really interesting, you don't see a whole bunch of Indian kids from India, or you don't see a whole bunch of Chinese kids running around looting stores, do you? No. In fact, do you ever see that? No. You know why? Because in those family culture systems, they would be absolutely filleted and ostracized. And family is so important to them that if they do that kind of thing, boom, yeah, they're going to get the hammer dropped on them. So you don't see that out of those cultures. It's interesting, right? 65% of the voters moving to Idaho are Republican. That is not shocking. Red zip codes are getting redder and blue zip codes are getting bluer. That is something that I am wildly aware of here in Bellevue, Washington, and Seattle. There's not red people moving in, and there's more blue people moving in because that's what they're comfortable with. And they're like, yeah, I don't mind the graffiti and, the violence and the theft and, all that stuff because, you got this great cross-pollination of people here. It's like, all right, okay. That's your thing. Great. Boise regional realtors don't have a stance on whether this kind of political division in real estate is good or bad. I don't think it is good or bad. It just is the way that it is. And we've known this for a long time. And the pandemic really put this issue in the crosshairs, didn't it? Because all of a sudden people are able to move wherever they want to. And it became wildly apparent based on who was shutting cities down, who was shutting schools down, and who wasn't, who was conservative and who was liberal. And so you were like, okay, yeah, all right. Jay Inslee, he shut our state down for no real reason because he said it was based on the data and the science. And that was just absolute nonsense. There was no data in the science which clearly outlined what direction to go. He just took the data and said, yep, I want to close her down because that's what all the other Democrats are doing. And I kind of wanted to be president there for a half second. And so this is what we're doing. And he did what his party dictated. And then you've got all these folks from California taking vacations in Florida because Florida was open and Cali was closed. So was Washington. I mean, the pandemic, and maybe it was a plandemic, right? From the standpoint of let's just see how they react. Well, this is end result from how we reacted and how we continue to react because, race, religion, family status, all of those things. As far as having a diverse neighborhood with regards to fair housing, we're absolutely wanting that diverse neighborhood. But you're probably not going to get it because belief system alone kind of dictates, right? We want to see a lot of thoughts and a lot of flavors. Okay. Is that what Idaho has now? Don't believe it is. You know what's interesting, though? One of the other most godless and probably lawless cities in the United States that has had some crazy, crazy political unrest and has a downtown core that has been absolutely decimated, its police force decimated like Seattle, is the most whitest in the country, and that is Portland, Oregon. So, all you white people with your liberal value system, how'd that work out for you? I'm just asking. It's kind of a rhetorical question, but you don't have to answer because how many podcasts have we done here on Portland, Oregon? Yeah. Some good people left in Portland, Oregon, and you guys are, I don't know how you do it, but people say the same thing about me. Sean, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, I'm in Bellevue. I'm not in Seattle. And people are like, yeah, it's the same thing. All right. We've beaten this one to death. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.